Hello everyone, this is Caillou, and welcome back to another Moxtober daily wrap-up. Moxtober, if you didn't already know, is a month-long event in which each day has a one-word prompt, and then people design and submit cards based on that. So today's prompt is Brew. But before we get into that, I really wanted to give a shout out to Randy from the Beacon of Creation server. Big thanks to you for typing up and collecting MSC files for the cards from that server. I think without that, it would have been quite likely that I wouldn't have been able to make this video, so thanks for that. But yeah, Brew. So I think people took this two ways mainly. You want to talk about that, Bradley?
Oh yeah, sure. So when you're brewing up something, one way is that you're doing some alchemy, and that's more of the witchy vibe. And the other way is if like in real life, you're a brewer or you go to a brewery, and then so you're making alcohol based type of beverages, or maybe even non-alcohol based.
Yeah, so which of those do you want to start off on, design-wise?
Oh, let's see. Let's go down the path of let's go with alchemy first. Or sorry, I meant I meant like let's go down that flavor, but whatever if is fitting of that. How about free sale alchemist? All right, so this one is a 1/2 that enters the battlefield and then says brew. And this means roll a six-sided die and you create a potion artifact token that's based on the result. Um, so one of these results, I'll bring up Necrogen here. And so this one has you pay a black, sacrifice it, target player discards a card, or you can pay one, sacrifice this artifact and another potion, and you brew again. So you're going to get another token that randomly. So it feels like what you're doing is you're trying to get that right concoction, and it may take some like drippy drops here, some maybe a little more improvised ingredients over here, and poof, some smoke comes out. Ah, this is what you needed, and then you have your perfect brew.
Yeah, it's super it's super flavorful how and I love the idea of remixing two potions to try and get your result. And I like that you can't do it with one alone. So there's an actual resource cost to re-rolling beyond just the mana cost. But yeah,
Mm.
I think it obviously requires some shortcutting, so I don't think you could put this in a standard set, but I think for uh, a non-standard limited environment, this seems like a really cool mechanic.
Yeah, there's oh, and shout out to the six on the die is the of your choice, which is a very elegant way of making sure you can still map five faces to each color, one for each color, and then six, it gives you a little more control. But yeah, it does do the thing that you see in conspiracy with like when they say you become the monarch, but they don't say on the card what that means, but they rely on you having the token card to tell you what that means.
Yeah, and one thing to point out, I think, with the potion of your choice is that to ensure that things aren't color pie breaks, you still have to pay the a color of mana to activate that potion's effect, which I think is a really cool way of keeping it on brand. I think maybe for if there was a brew archetype, there might be ways of either treasures or something so you can generate mana to use all your potions, or some way of cheaply or more cheaply or efficiently converting a potion to the potion of your choice, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Maybe a creature like can influence a die roll to be whatever else.
Oh yeah, that sounds very like not exactly conspiracy with it. I think altering die roll sounds like something that would be fun for a multiplayer chaotic style set.
Oh. Oh yeah, yeah. Results have gone wrong. Tampered with the lab equipment, something like that.
Okay, so moving on to the more ale flavor here, we've got Bargos. So Bargos is a creature for is it 4 or 5? Let's see. For 4, a 3/4 legendary creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can tap any number of creatures you control, and then you draw a card and gain 1 life for each creature tapped this way, but they don't untap during your next untap step. So basically, no mana cost, free life gain, and card draw, but you gotta keep tapping your creatures, and you can't do it every turn. So there is a downside.
Yeah, this looks like a lot of fun to do. Drawing cards is always nice, and the life is both flavorful, but also because you're keeping yourself open, you can maybe pad yourselves from some of the damage that people are doing to you for being both open and also getting more and more cards. But I'm excited to build a deck that is in green and blue that maybe has less card draw, but because I'll just play even more creatures and maybe lots of tokens, that will be my card draw.
Or just like abusing untap effects. Like I know there's, of course, if we're playing this in canon commander, there's all of like the untapped creatures from the Lorwyn block. There's also creatures
Ooh.
that just have abilities that can untap themselves. So yeah, I could definitely see that being like a fun sub theme. And then like the life gain could be like another sub theme. So yeah, lots of directions to take this if you want to play it as a commander.
Mm. All right. This one's kind of closer towards ale, but a little different. Maybe also towards alchemy flavor. Potion brewing. All right, so this one has a giant cauldron in the art. Who knows what's in it? Except we know one thing that's in it is food. Whenever you tap a creature for one or more mana, you spend that mana to activate an ability of a food. Put that many plus encounters on that creature, and you could pay 3, tap a creature you control, create a food token. This is an enchantment that costs a green. So sometimes when you're brewing up stuff, you're just kind of throwing in a bunch of stuff. And one of those, a common ingredient is some food pieces in there. You know, you got stew. Stew's got a bunch of different potatoes, carrots, and etc.
Yeah, it's every time I have to like catch myself because I'm like, no, don't make the pun because I was about to say it's very flavorful. But yeah, I like the idea of um, if you help out in the kitchen, you get fed. Is what like the mana ability feels like. Um,
Mm, yeah, that's right.
okay, speaking of slow cooking stuff, the next card I want to feature is Pot Brewer's Concoction. So this is a card without a mana cost. What's this? And that first line, cast each instant or sorcery exiled by Thought Brewer's concoction without paying their mana costs. Okay, weird. Oh, so you can suspend it for X blue blue black. Um, and whenever a time counter is removed from it while it's exiled, you can exile target instant or sorcery from a graveyard. So for like 4 mana, you can like delayed free cast a big card. But ideally, you want to be like you want to be like suspending this for a lot, so you can get the most bang for your buck. Just free cast a bunch of spells.
Yeah, I like it goes into that flavor of brewing that can be, it takes a while to prep and long term planning. Like, you know, that you'll want something very good later on, but you got to start now and it'll take a bit of time. All right, let's go into psychemics. Yeah, okay, I said that wrong. Psychemists research. Okay, so this one is pay 1 and a blue to draw a card for sorcery, and then it has iterate. As it resolves, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, and then you exile the chemist research with the servo. And then the servo now has tap, sacrifice this creature. You may cast a copy of the exile card. You still pay the cost. All right. So part of brewing, this might be familiar, just to even use the magic, the meta magic as a comparison where players can brew decks and sometimes things don't work out, you try again, right? You're iterating on your deck. And then inside of this, whatever set this has, with the iterate mechanic, you may try out drawing a card and then you figure out a way to go and repeat your results. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that it's like it's card advantage, but in a way that can be disrupted if you manage to kill the token, or if you have like a I forget the name, like Plague Engineer style effect when you just name servo. It's like, well, okay, that's painful. I also like that flavorfully we were talking about both of the things we were talking about earlier are very like high fantasy, and this takes it to a more like um, almost like cyberpunk science fiction world. So I love that we can
Oh,
see like the
yeah,
breadth
yeah.
of things that you can represent in magic flavor.
That's right.
Okay, so you mentioned meta magic right there, and talking about how like in the game of Magic, the word brewing has a specific meaning, And there were fewer designs exploring this than I thought, but one that I did catch and I liked was Daniel Master Brewer. It's Wooburg for a legendary creature human wizard. It's an uncard because you have to tap it to reveal 7 cards at random from a Magic the Gathering deck you own, and you can take a card from that and add it to your hand. So it feels like you're grabbing something and like, okay, I'm going to like I'm going to build a new deck this time, especially because of the you can't use the same deck twice for that ability. Always going for something new.
Yeah, that's that sounds like a lot of fun. Uh, this is very this. I imagine this would be a sweet commander for anyone who has that problem that I do not have. But there are people out there who have built like 30 commander decks, and they're like, I can never decide which ones to play or whatever. Well, I guess you can carry a whole suitcase of them and use this for person and enjoy playing randomly cards from all your decks. Hopefully, you don't have to spend too much time deciding on what card you pick, but thankfully, lands usually take up about 40% of revealed cards, so that should be honing it down to factor fiction levels of decisions, maybe.
The secret tech is to have a bunch of like get all your pre-release and draft decks and just keep them the same. And it's like no, see, it's technically a deck. You see, just to
Ah,
increase your chances. Just
oh boy,
man,
that's right.
why are you drafting so much Modern Horizons? Oh, no reason.
That's funny. That's good. Yeah, yeah, and you've put in the effort to create yet another quote unquote potion maybe. If the this Daniel is a in the game a potioner, maybe it does show them with the deck, but they're not a human gamer. They've ascended to being a wizard. Okay, so continuing ever further, but only because we also are just pretty much obligated to do so now. Although I think you've read every single one. Would you like to read the Mox one?
Oh boy, would I. So here we are. It's Mox Brew. And this time it's Arded. I guess the Tyrant one was also Arded, but hey, it's a pattern. So this one has an interesting mechanic, sidearm. So it's essentially a variant on a oh god, how can I forget the name of this? Companion, yeah. No cards in your starting deck have been printed at rare or mythic rare, which apparently is something that you can actually check in the comprehensive rules, like right now, because Cajun is again a rules manager, which is why it doesn't need to be silver bordered apparently. So the sidearm basically just means you can't play it in your starting deck, and you can draw it instead of a card if you would draw a card, um, and only at the start of your turn. So you don't get to do it off extra draws. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool as a mechanic because it's like Companion, except you can't just jam it in the main deck, um, and you don't get virtual card advantage off of it. But yeah, so basically, if you're playing Peasant, you get to have a free Moxen.
Oh, this is the Lutri of the sidearms, I guess. Or I don't know how many other sidearms there are where this mechanic comes from. Or if it was just made up for this card, or if it was pulled from somewhere else. Uh,
There's Tagalong is a version of this, but it doesn't have. You can't play this in your starting deck. But Tagalong, yeah, Tagalong is basically just like you if you would draw a card, you can instead put your Tagalong into your hand. Um, and that one has been seeing some popular brewing on the MSE server.
but yeah, very very smart to do this. That's every no matter what language card that you play, there is no multiple. Uh, there's no multiple versions of the same. Like if you go off of names and stuff like that, like aspects of names that can't be done because those vary. But there's always the same. This has been printed at Rare or Mythic, no matter what card you're playing with. Huh. It makes me like this would also be something that's always true for everyone else, but it's too wild and wacky. Or if it's like this card has not appeared in a Mythic Championship as a restriction.
Ooh, yeah, I think and the problem would be like it's a little bit harder to track that one because it's not a property of
Yeah.
the card itself.
Yep. Yep. All right. Next up, let's go with let's go with the batching Experimental Brew. This one is pay blue, sorcery, reveal the top three of your library, put a synthetic card from among them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And synthetic is artifacts, instant sorceries, and elementals. So things that are not natural, of course, are artifacts, but also, I guess, casting these magical spells, and then creatures that are just made up of magic.
Yeah, it feels like synthetic could theoretically include a lot of stuff, but I imagine that this would be in a set where elementals are kind of like the weird thing or like the odd one out. So that would make sense for this. But yeah, I
Hmm.
think that it's also just a pretty powerful cantrip because getting to dig three, and if your deck is mostly instants or sorceries, you can probably just play this without a qualm.
Hmm.
Like I think if control decks, if this said planeswalkers, they would be like, okay, we're in business.
Yeah.
But yeah, fun batching. So I think okay, and this card is like a really simple one, and that's basically just my only segue into the next card, which is Bubble Bubble, which this is classic witch cauldron flavor. Bubble Bubble, not much toil, but lots of trouble. So it's two green and a blue. You bounce an opponent's creature and you create a token that's a copy of that creature. So it's a very again, this is a card where I feel like this doesn't exist. It's so cool because it's very much like a mind control, except they still get the creature. You're just uh, tempoing them and grabbing a copy of it. So it can be costed reasonably cheaply. I could even see this at like uncommon in like a limited set, but it's just a very powerful, simple, and fun card.
Did you mean it doesn't exist at blue green, or because there is a mono blue version of this?
Is that cackling counterpart? No.
Uh, no, there's forgot I brought up the
Okay,
was able to
because
find it.
well, in that case, I'm a little bit sadder. I didn't know that this existed in canon magic, but
But yeah,
still a
it
cool
is kind of
design.
exciting when you find something that is like this is so simple, but no card ever has done this. Um, I'm able to find it, but it'll take too much time, I guess. But yeah, there is a mono blue version, but it because of the green and blue though, it makes it harder to cast, and I could see how that could be uncommon, especially if it's like maybe the signpost thing for a set.
Yeah, that scans. Like, might be like a tempo archetype that also cares about tokens.
Yeah. All right. So, speaking of cauldrons and toils or lack thereof, but in this case, there is Cauldron Toiler. Okay, so this one's a pay two and a black for a human warlock. When it enters the battlefield, you brew a potion, but it also has the adventure frame. And in that frame, it's got Eye of Newt for one black mana and says sorcery ingredient, and then put a minus one counter on target creature. All right, so it says brew a potion, so the associated token has that little monarch effect, or like the other um, potion mechanic we talked about. So this one token says when this token enters the battlefield, add any number of ingredients to it. And then you could pay one, sack the token. You may cast each ingredient added to the token. All right. So what you can do is you brew it, and then you have the Eye of Newt. You just say, "Hey, I'm going to add Eye of Newt to the potion," and then whenever you're ready, I guess whenever you have the mana for it, you can pay one sack, and then you could pay extra mana for every thing that you have add every ingredient you've added to the potion. And then if you have other cards on the battlefield, you can then start adding more and more ingredients that also have their own ingredients.
Yeah, I like the cumulative effect of it. I think maybe one other design. Actually, I'll discuss that one next. But had like that same like cumulative idea. But yeah, I think there's been a bunch of people who've tried to have a mechanic where it's like you add up to this big explosive effect, and this is the one which feels like very like effective in that.
Mm.
And I think brew a potion is just a very like fun uh, line of text. Also, I have somehow I don't know how I keep doing this. I've somehow also forgotten to put the PT on this one. I'll have to look that up. But I'm just
If
gonna let's just assume it's a 2-1. Let's just go with that.
Sure, yeah. If I ever have to choose a challenge to face off against you in a battle to of whatever, I'll choose a challenge that involves putting power and toughness on MSC cards. Maybe I'll win.
Oh, my one weakness.
Yeah. Uh, All right, what are we going to talk about next?
I was going to talk about Slurry Drinker, which I think touches on, like, again, we had like so many, like, I think this was the file with the most tokens submitted. We had 12 token cards submitted, and I think if I remember right, something like five more different like potion tokens beyond that. So today was definitely a day for tokens. But yeah, Slurry Drinker, the important part about this is when a creature you control dies, you may brew it. So you create a potion token and you exile that creature as its ingredient. And it gets +1/+1 for each potion you control with a creature as its ingredient. I like that because it makes it sound like, okay, you can have potions with other stuff, like instants or sorceries or enchantments. I want to see what those potions are like. And it just makes me really curious about how you can what do you do in this environment with potion tokens? Like, how do you care? Like, what are other ways that you care about what's exiled with it? Can you sack? Is there something that lets you sack potion tokens to cast those? Like, what is their general function in this environment, or are they just like storage things that you just check the properties of?
Yeah, that's very cool. Like you can go even wild if you get into like maybe rare and mythic ones where one of them is like you have a potion with the card with an even mana cost, or maybe another one that says you have a potion, a goblin potion. Then you're like, okay, cool. These are all the different various some really weird ingredient things that it's evocative of the whole Eye of Newt and breath of a whatever ogre type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's just so many knobs on this. I think I would love to see someone brew a set with this because I think that like so much you can do.
All right, let's talk about Farika's Brew or Farika's Brew. This is the Theros God I'm trying to pronounce, but so this one is a hybrid of green/black for the single hybrid mana. Enchanted creature you control, when it enters the battlefield, deal 4 to it, to the creature, and then enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has death touch. All right, so I think those is a great choice for a Theros God. This is the person of poisons, and one aspect of like of drinking a potion or a brew or whatever is sometimes you see in like popular fiction that like you drink it and then like the vial drops from the drinker's hand to the ground and you see them like because they're like shocked and stuff and they're undergoing some kind of transformation and it's a really ugly process. They're in pain, they're writhing around, and
The broken
sometimes.
bottle is hissing and there's steam rising up from
Oh
it.
yeah. Wow, yeah, that's very descriptive. Yep, very dramatic, cinematic. Yeah, that kind of experience. But after they make it through, they may come out much more powerful and have more abilities than before. Very scary process. And this, I think, is evocative of that very well. And I really love um, that green and black are the colors for this one because both of those colors actually have a way for you to grant indestructible to end a turn, so you can start getting like kind of creative for how to work around this if you want to put it on a creature that is smaller than having like having 5 toughness to survive this.
I also one thing that I could think of is like you use this with act of treason effects. So if there's something that you really need to kill, you can just like gain control of it and then slap this on it. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
or like you could just put if you want to have like a defender's archetype, and then you could have because you can I think you can reasonably have like at like two you can have like a wall of mist, and then at three you can really start getting crazy um with the defender status. But this would be really good for like a defender's deck.
And you're already brewing.
Okay, so the next card I want to talk about is Ossian Displacer. So I think we've seen lots of like brewing as like this thing for like an object. Ossian Displacer with its keyword Menagerie takes it to a different place. So when it enters the battlefield, if there are five or more different creature types among creatures you control, you return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So this way, like the brewing is the thought of like combining different creature types, that kind of chimeric experience. And so I like it feels like a very Simic thing to do. So I kind of like I'm so kind of surprised this doesn't exist already because it also it makes it so that you can have vanilla creatures but they become so much more important because they have those creature types.
Yeah. Um, funny enough, Castmire is green white archetype is currently Menagerie with 5 or more different creature types. So um, definitely a fun thing to play with.
Oh yeah, I'm also remembering. I just remembered. I think I forgot what it was called. Design. Oh yeah, Design a Draft Horizons had a green white archetype that I think was similar but not the same. It cared about number of different creature types, but I think it might have scaled rather than been a
Mm,
static thing. But yeah, it's still like a very cool thing that I hope they do in canon Magic at some point.
yeah, yeah. It feels like a natural uh, direction to go for. Uh, yeah, the Simic definitely appropriate. We got that. We've seen that with the even the most recent Sharkdo Crab and friends are all like 3 different types, and they didn't directly tie into it like Menagerie here, but I could see how they can do that in the future. Okay, let's hack some spells. Let's go. Let's speaking of guilds, let's go to the Is It Brewery. All right, so this one is pay 2 blue red for an enchantment. So as an additional cost to cast instant or sorcery spells, you can pay any amount of mana. For each mana you spend this way, you can choose one. You can give it flash, or you can change a mention of a basic land type with another one, and you can do that for any number of times for this one. And then you can make it uncounterable, or you can give the spell draw a card. So
Yeah,
this
this is
is
a
a
lot
very
of fun. This is so much
yeah.
fun. I think like at a lower cost it would probably be difficult, but as a 4 mana do nothing enchantment, this feels like a very much like a commander card where you really start to pop off by like, okay, the control player can't do anything to me. I'm gonna I can like make all of my spells draw a card. If you really want to be like the funny guy at the table, you can bring all of the weird um, color specific hate cards or the weird like text hacking cards, and you can really go off with that somehow. But yeah, lots of fun.
Yeah. This actually also gets me kind of thinky about how do I approach this because I know I can do flash. If I have just the one spell I can cast for during a turn, say it's turn, it's turn 5 because I've already cast this on turn 4 and I've got a 3 cost spell in my hand. I go, all right, do I want to try to leave one up or maybe I have a 4 cost in my hand as well. Like do I want to leave one up so they can't be countered? I look at everyone's lands. Do I wanna wait till someone's ended turn because I actually have a bounce spell in my hand, so I would have to leave up yet an extra one to grant flash? Or do I go for the value and risk it and don't care about being countered and do the draw card? Yeah, very cool to think about all the what's the optimal play.
I think the opposite of optimal, um, the Johnny thing, is kind of like what I mentioned earlier with that second mode. And another card that I think is very Johnny is Potent Poison. Um, it's triple black. You can't cast it from anywhere other than your hand, otherwise you insta lose. And as an additional cost, you have to sacrifice 2 salamanders and a human and exile an artifact from your graveyard. And you're like, what's going on? This is a lot of conditions. It's already triple pips. What's But it has a very simple, straightforward effect. Target player loses the game. And man, alt win cons are always fun to build around. So I think, and this is flavorful as heck. Has lots of conditions. Seems like a really fun one to try and break.
Yeah, this is super cool. I love the salamander is very elegant way of just throwing it back to, "Oh, yeah, you're making a witchy brew kind of potion." Uh, yeah, I think this is fair. It makes sense for the flavor that it says target player loses the game because you're poisoning them instead of saying win the game. But it's also good for gameplay reasons to have more of the lose the game if you're ever to put this in a commander deck. This is likely to be more played because you don't. You'd have to deal with the other two, so it's kind of self balancing the other two opponents in your game.
Yeah, which is why like stuff like Thassa's Oracle, they are obviously more powerful in like CDH because you don't need to dirtle around killing one player at a time.
So, not should I mention the Boyle test card?
I have no clue what that is, so go ahead.
Okay, all right. Speaking of wild and wacky cards, the wonton brew. Uh, stop me if I should be stopped here from talking about it. Here we go. Red or black and red, and then okay, it's a 3 mana spell. You can perform the boil test on a card you own outside the game. If it passes, create 3 non-legendary token copies of the tested card. Now, this has been done in I think this was spread on social media before where someone was, actually doing this thing, and,
Wait, but what is it to test for? Like if the card is real?
uh I'm not sure what it was testing for. I forget. But I remember this being brought up, and I'm not sure. Yeah. So uh, can't say. It's probably someone. If you're watching, you might be going. You know exactly what we're not getting, not remembering here, or at least not me not remembering. But I do remember this spread around on social media, so it's a nice cultural reference to this. I'm not sure about if this can ever even be done in silver border. Maybe this kind of encourages possibly ruining your cards. I'm not sure. Oh
Don't
wait,
eat the delicious cards.
oh yes, yes. Oh, wait, then again, I do remember or not Mox Confetti, Chaos Confetti. So never mind. This is maybe justified. You can just be careful when you boil stuff. Please don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, only hurt the cards. They don't have feelings.
Yeah. But also, yeah, brew. That's a very nice. This is of all the cultural things in on social media or whatever, Magic, Twitter. This is a very brew worthy reference.
Okay, I think with that, we're running on the edge of time. I actually didn't design a card for this prompt. I was a little too busy, so sorry for all my fans out there who are waiting for my new design. But um, Bradley more than made up for designing a whopping 6 cards and a whole new mechanic to boot. So do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, yeah. But also, yeah, it's ironic that you were so busy. I know this takes up a lot of your time. Um, doing these videos that if you didn't make the videos, you would have had a card maybe. All right. So, yeah, let's talk about, let's bring up one, maybe, toxic shroom, super fungus, or toxic shroom, I guess is the one on top.
Aye, aye.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about this. Here we go. Um, this is a split card to start off, obviously, but it has the card type alchemy, and that behaves a little differently. So what it means is when you cast Toxic Shroom, for example, you pick that side, pay 2 and a black, and when you do that, you star or add to a brew. So you just have something set off to the side. You put this card there, and it's now in your brew, one of your brews. You draw a card because card advantage. Um, you don't want to be card disadvantage. And then now there's also what you can do with the brew. At your upkeep, you can play a brew that you have. So that's where the rest of this side takes place. Where the brew says until your next turn, target creature dot dot dot. And then if you only do the shroom, it says gets -2, -2. So if you don't mix it with anything else, you give one creature -2, -2. And you did that for paying 2 and a black, but you also had drawn a card. So you can imagine this was a very slow pay 3 cantrip. A creature gets -2, -2. There's some it's a little cheaper because it took a little while to do, but yeah, let's try to find the right costing. But that's the idea here. So let's say you brought up another card. Let's do Salamander Breath. So you had the toxic shroom off to the side. Or maybe you pick the super shroom. So that gets +2/+2. But now you have Salamander Breath and Newt Spittle. And you're like, you know what? I'm gonna go with the Newt Spittle. I'm gonna cast that right after I had cast the super fungus. So then I'm gonna add that to the same brew. So now when you get to your next upkeep, what you do is when you play it, you pick a creature to both get +2/+2 and can't be blocked until end of turn. And that was for the combined mana cost of 2 and 1. So that's like 3 mana. So both of those things just took a while. But you do have the option of making 2 different brews, and the advantage is maybe you give one creature just the can't be blocked or just the +2/+2. But the catch is You can only play one brew at a time per upkeep.
Yeah, and that's like it's a very like it's one of those things where like I think it's very complicated to get when you're first reading it, but then very intuitive once you've flipped that switch. And again, like I think like the flavor for each of these is out of the park. How you had that duality of it, so I really like that. Um, these are also this is really funny because this uses an MSC template that isn't like in the circulation right now. So we had to do a little bit of digging to find this one, but I think that like that works perfectly in a sense because there's not a lot of cards running around with this kind of frame, and that makes this even more special.
Oh yeah. I I knew I wanted to have the alchemy cards each one allow you a choice because of the flavor of, ooh, I'll pick this ingredient or this ingredient. But I was trying to find I was initially going with split cards, but the thing was with the split cards, they have the art that's there, and I knew that to convey this mechanic, I never use art anyway, and then it's easier to read if you have it on top like this, and you have a lot more space. But you can imagine if I were a graphic designer that did can manipulate Magic Set Editor very well, that you can scoot down that all that space at the bottom with Newt Spittle, and you can put in some sweet art. But uh, yeah, yeah.
If actual Magic can do the ugliness that is aftermath cards, I'm pretty sure that like we can do a nice clean split into three.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or it could even be the traditional split, but the like you can imagine the art is actually in the center and there's not like two different arts. It's actually just a center thing. And I think this could work because I actually themed every one of these cards. Like if you bring up Basilisk Blood or Blast Nectar, every one of these actually are thematically linked to each other, not just gameplay, but also with flavor. For this one, it's a liquid, right? There's a nectar or a basilisk blood. But the
Yeah,
previous
and you
one
could
was
and
like
the picture could just be like a shelf with a bunch of bottles on it.
yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, whether it's a salamander slash newt or a glass bottle or the fungus or shroom, those are all like I think you can maybe depict. So that's a good idea. Different shelves that you're pulling from.
Yeah, and like it comes back around to what I was talking about earlier with the idea of like having that. Oh, this is actually unrelated, but I just wanted to mention like that one big effect or like that build up into something big. I think that this does that in a cool way as well. So I think, yeah, I think like mechanically, there's like so many different places covered, but again, I love like this how we get to see convergent design acting in real time. How people come to like kind of similar themes despite having vastly different implementations of them.
Ooh, yes, yes, very true.
Okay, I think with that, we can wrap up today's episode. Thanks everyone for watching. Once again, I would like to give a big thanks to, well, first of all, Bradley for coming onto the show and also for helping me out by collecting all of the designs from Twitter, to Ancestral, who's been really helpful in collecting all of the MTG.design designs, and Randy from the Beacon of Creation server for collecting the designs from there. Um, if you want to make your own Moxtober designs, uh, just put them out on social media with MTG Moxtober, and I'll have a link to the list of prompts in the description. Unfortunately, unlike previous days, I don't get to say if you tag them, we'll collect them because the fact is that this has become like a little bit too busy for me. So I I may get back to making them later in the month, but for now, I think I'm gonna take a pause and stop making these daily wrap ups. So hope you enjoyed them for as long as they lasted.
Hey,
Um,
a big shout out to you for. I know it's taken hours each day for you to put together all this stuff, and you lasted 10 days straight putting in multiple hours per day. That's amazing. Um, but yeah, I was like, how are you still going? But also, it didn't. It also is harder and a good problem that the number kept growing over time. A lot of you are jumping in to challenge yourself creatively, and that's super awesome.
Yeah, I
It's
think we
just
had
like
something
with
like 37, 30 something design, 30, yeah, like around 40 designs at the start, and that's doubled to today we had like 79, just bordering on 80 designs. So,
whoo. Yeah, yeah. Um yeah, so this video series, like however on and off, it's a nice bonus, but it's the Moxtober challenge itself is always there, as with previous years, which didn't even have any videos. But yeah, just like with other activities, challenge yourself with these prompts, come up with cool cards. We'll see you um, on the discords and stuff.
yeah, like big shout out to the community. I've seen so many people talking like everywhere about Moxtober and being excited about it and designing, and that's the coolest part. But yeah. Oh, and one last thing, if someone does want to like take up the mantle and make these wrap ups themselves, I can assist in like doing the graphics portion of it or like in sending over some of the resources I've been using. But yeah, otherwise, until next time, this is Caillou signing off.
See ya.